Put them down. I'll pay whatever it takes, Rancher said. My girls need mother vertical bar. Haroon woke up before the sun rose.
The air was cold, and the wind moved softly across the open fields of his ranch. The wooden house stood alone in the middle of wide land, surrounded by dry grass, tall trees, and the low sounds of animals. From his small bedroom window he could see the dark sky slowly turning lighter as morning approached. He sat up in his bed and rubbed his tired eyes.
Another long day was waiting for him. Since his wife had passed away, he had learned to live without comfort. Every morning began with silence that reminded him of her absence. The space beside him in the bed felt empty, just like his heart.
Haroon slowly stood up and walked toward the small room where his two daughters were sleeping. Their names were Sarah and Mina.
They were still young, innocent, and unaware of how difficult life had become. He stood at the doorway and looked at them with love.
Their small faces looked peaceful, their breaths gentle and steady. For a moment Haroon felt both love and pain.
Love because they were his everything. Pain because they no longer had their mother.
He whispered softly, "May God protect you both." He quietly moved to the kitchen and began preparing breakfast. The small stove crackled as he placed a pan on it. He heated milk, cut some bread, and tried his best to make a warm meal. He was not a trained cook, but he had learned quickly after his wife's death. He could not let his daughters go hungry. While he worked, he heard footsteps behind him. Sarah had woken up early, just like her father. "Good morning, Papa," she said in a sleepy voice. Haroon turned and smiled at her. "Good morning, my princess. Did you sleep well?" She nodded and walked toward him, hugging his leg tightly. Haroon bent down and held her close. For a moment, everything felt right, even though he knew trouble was coming. After breakfast, Haroon stepped outside. The ranch stretched far and wide, with dozens of cattle scattered across the land. Some were eating grass, others were resting, and a few were wandering near the wooden fences. Haroon had built this ranch with his own hands years ago. He had worked day and night to grow his livestock and provide a good life for his family. His wife used to help him, watching the animals while he worked in the fields. Now he handled everything alone. As he walked toward the barn, he noticed something unusual. A few of his cows were acting strangely. They were restless, moving nervously and making loud, uneasy sounds. Haroon frowned and approached them carefully. One cow was breathing heavily, foam forming around its mouth. Another was stumbling as if it could barely stand. A deep fear grew in Haroon's chest. He had seen sickness in animals before, but this looked worse than anything he had ever witnessed. Before he could understand what was happening, he heard the sound of a truck approaching. Dust rose in the distance as a government veterinary vehicle drove toward his ranch. Haroon stood still, his heart pounding. He knew this could not be good news. The truck stopped near the gate, and two men stepped out. One of them was a veterinary officer named Malik, and the other was his assistant. Malik had visited the ranch before for regular checkups. He walked toward Haroon with a serious expression. "Haroon, we received reports of an outbreak in this area," Malik said in a calm but firm voice. "We need to inspect your cattle immediately." Haroon swallowed hard and nodded. "Please, do whatever you must. I just want my animals to be safe." Malik and his assistant began examining the sick cows carefully. They checked their temperature, looked at their eyes, and studied their movements. The more they observed, the more worried they appeared. After a long silence, Malik turned to Haroon. "I'm sorry to say this," he began slowly, "but your cattle are infected with a dangerous disease. It spreads quickly and can wipe out your entire herd." Haroon felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. His hands trembled, and his face grew pale. "What does that mean?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Malik sighed deeply. "The only safe option is to put the infected animals down. If we don't act now, the disease will spread to all your livestock and possibly even nearby farms." Haroon stood frozen. The words echoed in his mind like a cruel hammer.
These cattle were not just animals to him. They were his hard work, his livelihood, his future, and the only way he supported his daughters. He looked toward the barn where more cows stood inside, unaware of their fate. Memories flooded his mind, late nights feeding them, long days protecting them from storms, and his wife laughing beside him as they worked together. His chest tightened, and his eyes grew wet. At that moment, Sarah and Mina came running outside, curious about the strange truck and unfamiliar men. "Papa, what is happening?" Mina asked, holding her sister's hand tightly. Haroon forced a small smile, kneeling down to their level. "Nothing to worry about, my loves. Go back inside for now." But Malik looked at the girls with concern. He knew what Haroon was about to face. Haroon stood up again and turned back to Malik. His voice shook as he spoke. "If we don't do this, will my daughters be in danger?" Malik did not hesitate. "Yes. This disease is unpredictable. If it spreads, it could harm other animals and create serious problems around your home." Haroon felt his heart break completely. He looked toward his house, imagining his daughters sleeping peacefully at night, unaware of the danger lurking outside. He thought of how he had already lost their mother. He could not bear the thought of losing them too. Tears rolled down his face, but he wiped them quickly. He straightened his shoulders, showing the strength of a father who would do anything to protect his children. Taking a deep breath, he finally spoke. "Put them down," he said firmly, though his voice trembled. "I'll pay whatever it takes." Malik nodded slowly, clearly moved by Haroon's courage and sacrifice. As the officers began preparing their equipment, Haroon walked away toward the fence, unable to watch what was about to happen. The sounds of his cattle filled the air, but soon those sounds would fade forever. He placed his hands on the wooden fence and lowered his head. The weight of his decision pressed heavily on his soul. He was losing everything he had built, but in his heart he knew he was saving something far more precious, the lives of his daughters. Inside the house, Sarah and Mina sat by the window, watching their father from afar. They could see his sadness, even if they did not understand its reason. Sarah whispered softly, "Why does Papa look so worried?" Mina shook her head. "I don't know, but I don't like it." Hours passed as the officers carried out their painful duty. Haroon stayed outside, silent and still, feeling his ranch slowly fall apart around him. The land that once felt full of life now felt empty and broken. By the time the sun began to set, the task was finished. The officers approached Haroon with heavy hearts. "It's done," Malik said quietly. "Your land is now safe." Haroon nodded but did not speak. He felt numb, as if part of him had died along with his cattle. As night fell, he walked back toward his house. His daughters ran to him, wrapping their small arms around him tightly. "Papa, are you okay?" Sarah asked softly. Haroon knelt down and hugged them both, holding them close as if he would never let go. "I am okay," he whispered. "As long as you two are safe." That night, as Haroon lay awake in his bed staring at the dark ceiling, he knew his life had changed forever. He had lost his ranch, his animals, and his hard-earned stability. But when he looked at his daughters sleeping peacefully beside him, he knew he had made the right choice. The next morning came slowly, like it did not want to arrive. The sun rose over the empty ranch, but the land no longer looked alive. The once busy fields were quiet, too quiet. Where Haroon used to hear the soft sounds of his cattle moving, now there was only wind passing through dry grass. Haroon woke up before his daughters. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wooden floor. His body felt heavy, but his mind felt even heavier. He could still see the image of his animals being taken away in his thoughts. He could still hear their cries echoing in his ears. He placed his hands over his face and took a slow breath. He could not allow himself to break down. His daughters depended on him, and he knew that falling apart was not an option. Quietly, he stood up and walked to the kitchen. The house felt colder than usual, as if the sadness outside had entered inside. He lit the stove, heated some milk, and cut bread for breakfast. His movements were slow,
not because he was tired, but because his heart felt broken. Sarah and Mina woke up a little later. They came running into the kitchen just like they always did. "Good morning, Papa," they said together. Haroon forced a smile. "Good morning, my girls. Come, eat your breakfast." They sat at the small wooden table and began eating. Haroon watched them carefully. They were talking softly with each other, unaware of how difficult their father's life had become overnight. After breakfast, Haroon stepped outside. The empty fields greeted him like a painful reminder of what he had lost. The barn stood silent, its doors open, but no animals inside. He walked slowly across the land, his boots sinking slightly into the dry soil. He touched the wooden fence, remembering how he used to lean against it while watching his cattle. Every corner of the ranch held a memory of his wife and his old life. As he walked, he heard footsteps behind him. It was his neighbor, Kareem, an older man who lived on a nearby farm. Kareem approached him with a serious expression. "I heard what happened," Kareem said gently. "I am very sorry, Haroon." Haroon nodded, but did not speak. Kareem placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing. Your daughters are safe, and that matters more than anything." Haroon looked at the ground. "I know, but it still hurts." "This ranch was everything I built," Kareem sighed. "Sometimes life takes things from us, not because we are weak, but because we must protect something greater." Haroon appreciated Kareem's words, but the pain in his chest did not lessen. Over the next few days, news of what happened spread quickly through the village. People began talking about Haroon's loss. Some felt pity for him, while others spoke with judgment. A group of men gathered near the local market one afternoon, whispering among themselves. "Haroon has nothing left now," one man said. "How will he support his daughters?" Another man shook his head. "A ranch without cattle is useless. He should sell the land and leave." These words reached Haroon's ears through others, and each sentence cut deeper than a knife. He tried to ignore them, but it was difficult. At home, Haroon worked harder than ever. He repaired broken fences, cleaned the barn, and tried to prepare the land for future use. Even though he had no animals left, he refused to let his ranch fall apart completely. Every morning, he woke up early and worked until late evening. His hands grew rough, his back ached, and his face looked tired. Still, he never complained. Inside the house, Sarah and Mina noticed that their father looked different. He spoke less, smiled less, and often stared into empty space. One evening, as they sat together for dinner, Sarah suddenly spoke. "Papa, why don't we have cows anymore?" she asked innocently. Haroon paused, holding his spoon in midair. He looked at his daughter carefully, not wanting to scare her with the truth. "They were sick, my child," he said softly. "They could have hurt us." Mina tilted her head. "Will we get new cows?" Haroon hesitated. "Maybe one day. But right now, we must be patient." The girls nodded, but their faces still showed confusion. That night, after putting them to bed, Haroon sat alone by the small window in his living room. The moonlight shone softly across the floor. He thought about his wife, remembering her gentle smile and warm voice. He whispered quietly, "If only you were here to help me." Days turned into weeks. Haroon's savings began to run low. Without cattle, he had no real source of income. He started doing small jobs for neighbors, helping them fix roofs, repair tools, or work in their fields. Some people were kind and paid him fairly. Others took advantage of his situation, giving him very little in return for his hard work. Still, Haroon accepted everything with patience. His only goal was to keep food on the table for his daughters. One afternoon, while Haroon was working at a nearby farm, Sarah and Mina were playing outside their house. They ran around the yard laughing and chasing each other. Suddenly, Mina stopped and looked toward the road. "Look, Sarah," she said. "People are staring at us." A group of women from the village were passing by, whispering among themselves. One of them pointed toward the house and shook her head. Sarah felt uncomfortable. "Why are they looking at us like that?" Mina shrugged, but her smile faded. When Haroun returned home that evening, he noticed his daughters sitting quietly instead of playing. "What happened?" he asked gently. Sarah looked at him and said, "Papa, do people think we are poor now?" Haroun felt his heart sink. He knelt down and held her hands. "Listen to me," he said softly. "We may not have much, but we have each other." "That makes us rich." Sarah nodded slowly, but Haroun could see that the outside world had already begun to affect them. As time passed, the girls began to miss their mother more deeply. At night, they sometimes cried softly in their beds. One evening, Mina hugged Haroun tightly and said, "Papa, I wish Mama was here." Haroun felt tears fill his eyes, but he held them back. He hugged her just as tightly. "I miss her too, my love," he whispered. Despite all the pain, Haroun never showed weakness in front of others. In the village, he walked with his head held high even when people whispered behind his back. Some neighbors slowly began to respect him for his strength. They saw how much he loved his daughters and how hard he worked to provide for them. One kind woman named Farah often sent small plates of food to Haroun's house, saying, "You should not carry everything alone." Haroun felt grateful but also ashamed that he had to accept help. Late one night, as Haroun lay awake again, he thought about his future. His ranch felt empty, his bank account was almost gone, and his body was exhausted. But when he looked toward the small bed where his daughter slept peacefully, he felt a spark of determination. He promised himself silently, "No matter how hard life becomes, I will never let my girls suffer." The struggle of being both a father and a mother was slowly changing him. He was becoming stronger, more patient, and more selfless than ever before. Yet deep inside, he knew one truth. No matter how much he loved his daughters, he could never fully replace the warmth and care of a mother. Months passed after the loss of Haroun's cattle. The ranch no longer looked the same. The grass had grown taller, the barn had gathered dust, and the once busy land felt lonely. Haroun still woke up before sunrise every day, but now his mornings were filled with silence instead of animal sounds. He had taken on many small jobs around the village. Some days he helped farmers repair broken fences. Other days he carried heavy bags of grain, fixed roofs, or worked in fields under the hot sun. His hands had become rough, and his face showed signs of deep tiredness, but his will never broke. Inside the house, Sarah and Mina were growing a little older. They had started school, and their teacher spoke kindly about them. They were polite, quiet, and smart, but often very serious for their age. Haroun tried his best to be both a father and a mother to them. He cooked their meals, combed their hair, helped with homework, and tucked them into bed every night. Still, he knew something was missing. One afternoon, Haroun walked to the small school to pick up his daughters. As he waited outside, he noticed a woman standing near the gate, talking gently with some children. She was Amina, a school teacher who had recently moved to the village. She had a soft voice, kind eyes, and a calm smile. The children clearly liked her. Sarah and Mina ran out of school holding hands, just like always. "Papa!" they called out happily. Haroun smiled and hugged them both. "Did you have a good day?" "Yes," Sarah said. "Teacher Amina told us a nice story today." Haroun looked toward Amina, who was still standing nearby. She noticed him looking and walked towards them slowly. "You must be Haroun," she said politely. "I am Amina." "I teach your daughters." Haroun nodded respectfully. "Yes, I am." "Thank you for taking care of them." Amina smiled gently. "They are good children, very polite and very kind." They spoke for a few minutes before Haroun took his daughters home. That evening, as they sat together for dinner, Mina spoke excitedly. "Papa, Teacher Amina is very nice. She tells us stories about kindness and patience." Haroun listened quietly, but his mind was already thinking deeply. Over the next few weeks, Haroun began to notice Amina more often. Sometimes she would walk past his house, and sometimes she would stop to greet him and his daughters. One day she came to visit their home for the first time. Haroun was surprised but welcomed her inside politely. "I wanted to check on Sarah and Mina," she said softly. They seem a little quiet in class lately. Haroon nodded slowly. They missed their mother very much. Amina looked at the girls with understanding. She sat beside them and spoke gently. You are both very brave, she said. Your mother would be proud of you. Sarah and Mina looked at her with wide eyes. No one had spoken to them like that before. After that day, Amina visited them more often. Sometimes she brought small sweets for the girls. Other times she helped them with their homework.
Haroon watched carefully from a distance. He noticed how naturally she cared for his daughters.
She spoke to them with patience, never rushed them, and always listened when they talked. Still, Haroon felt conflicted. One night after putting Sarah and Mina to bed, Haroon sat alone in his living room, staring at the dim lamp on the table. His mind went back to his wife. He remembered her laughter, her kindness, and the way she used to care for their daughters. The thought of another woman taking her place made his heart feel uneasy. At the same time, he could not ignore what he saw every day. His daughters needed more than just food and shelter. They needed warmth, emotional care, and the gentle touch that only a mother could truly give. The next morning, Haroon went to work as usual. As he walked through the village, he saw Amina speaking with another teacher near the school. She noticed him and smiled. Good morning, Haroon, she said. Good morning, he replied quietly. For a moment, they walked together toward the school gate. Amina broke the silence first. I can see that your daughters carry a lot in their hearts, she said gently. They are strong, but they are still children. Haroon sighed. I try my best, but I know I cannot replace their... Mother Amina looked at him with sympathy. You are doing more than most fathers would. That matters. Her words stayed with Haroon throughout the day. Later that evening, Haroon sat outside his house, watching the sunset. Sarah and Mina were playing nearby, laughing softly. Kareem, his old neighbor, walked toward him slowly. You look deep in thought, Kareem said as he sat beside Haroon. Haroon nodded. I have many thoughts. Kareem waited patiently. After a long pause, Haroon spoke. Do you think a man like me should think about marrying again? Kareem looked at him carefully, then smiled gently. That is not a simple question, he said. But your daughters need care that only a mother can truly give. And you need support, too. Haroon lowered his head. I fear they will think I am forgetting their real mother. Kareem shook his head slowly. If you choose wisely, they will not feel replaced. They will feel loved. That night, Haroon barely slept. He thought about his daughters, their future, and the emptiness in their lives. He remembered how Sarah sometimes cried quietly before sleeping, and how Mina would hug her pillow tightly, pretending it was their mother. The next day at school, Amina called Haroon aside after classes ended. May I speak with you for a moment? She asked politely. Haroon nodded. She took a deep breath. I have noticed that Sarah and Mina are struggling emotionally. They are very well behaved, but I see sadness in their eyes. Haroon felt his chest tighten. I know. Amina hesitated before continuing. I do not mean to cross any line, but... Have you ever considered that they might need a mother figure in their lives? Her words struck Haroon deeply, but he did not feel anger. Instead, he felt understanding. I have been thinking about that, he admitted quietly. Amina nodded. Whatever you decide, it must be with care and love, not just for yourself, but for them. That evening, Haroon sat with his daughters by the small fire inside their home. Sarah leaned against him, looking up at the stars through the open window. Papa, she said softly, do you think Mama can see us from heaven? Haroon swallowed hard. I believe she can, my child. Mina wrapped her arms around his waist. Do you think she is happy with us? Haroon hugged them both tightly. She would be very proud of you. As they sat together, Haroon realized something clearly. His daughters were growing, but their hearts were still fragile.
They needed love, warmth, and guidance that he alone could not fully provide. Late that night, Haroun stood outside under the open sky.
The wind blew gently across his face and the stars shone brightly above him. He whispered softly, "If I take this step, please guide me to do what is right for my girls."
For the first time since his wife's death, Haroun allowed himself to seriously consider remarriage.
Not for his loneliness, but for his daughter's happiness and emotional well-being. His heart was still heavy with grief, but slowly, a small light of hope began to appear. He knew that this decision would not be easy. The village would talk. His daughters might be confused. His own heart might struggle. But deep down, he felt that this difficult choice might be the only way to give Sarah and Mina the love they truly needed. And as the night grew darker, Haroun stood there quietly, torn between the past he loved and the future his daughters deserved. The days after Haroun began thinking seriously about remarriage were restless. He woke up with heavy thoughts and went to sleep with even heavier ones. His mind kept going back and forth like a swinging door. One moment he felt sure that his daughters needed a mother, and the next moment he felt guilty for even considering another woman. The ranch looked quiet in the early morning light. Dew covered the grass and the air felt fresh but cold. Haroun stepped outside with a cup of warm tea in his hand. He stood near the old wooden fence and looked across his empty land. Even though there were no cattle anymore, the place still felt like home. Inside the house, Sarah and Mina were still asleep. Their small beds were close together, just like always. Haroun watched them for a few moments before heading toward the kitchen to prepare breakfast. As he was cutting bread, he heard a soft knock at the door. He wiped his hands and went to open it. Amina was standing outside holding a small basket covered with cloth. "Good morning, Haroun," she said gently. Haroun looked surprised, but welcomed her inside politely. "Good morning. Please, come in." She placed the basket on the table. "I brought some fresh bread and fruit for the girls. I thought they might enjoy it." Haroun felt a mix of gratitude and hesitation. "You did not have to do that," Amina smiled softly. "I wanted to." At that moment, Sarah and Mina came running into the room, rubbing their eyes. "Teacher Amina," they said happily. Amina knelt down and hugged them lightly. "Good morning, my little stars." "Did you sleep well?" They nodded eagerly and quickly ran to look inside the basket. Their faces lit up when they saw the food. Haroun watched them quietly. He noticed how naturally Amina interacted with them, how warm and gentle she was without even trying.
After breakfast, Amina did not leave right away.
Instead, she asked if she could see the ranch. Haroun hesitated but then nodded. "If you like, I can show you around." They walked together across the land while Sarah and Mina followed behind them, holding hands and talking excitedly. Amina looked around with interest. "This place is beautiful even now," Haroun sighed softly. "It used to be full of life." Amina turned to him with understanding. "Loss does not take away the beauty of what you built. It just changes how you see it." Her words stayed with Haroun as they continued walking. They stopped near the old barn. The wooden doors creaked softly in the wind. Inside, everything was still clean but empty. Sarah walked toward one corner and looked at the ground quietly. Mina stood beside her, suddenly serious. Amina noticed their change in mood. She knelt down in front of them. "Do you miss the cows?" she asked gently. Sarah nodded slowly. "Papa worked very hard for them." Amina placed a hand over her heart. "Your father is very strong, and you two are very brave girls." The girls looked at her with trust in their eyes. As the weeks passed, Amina began visiting the ranch more often. Sometimes she came after school, bringing small gifts or helping the girls with their homework. She never tried to replace their mother. Instead, she spoke about her with respect, often saying things like, "Your mother raised you well," or "She must have been very loving." This made Sarah and Mina feel safe around her. One afternoon, Haroun was fixing a broken part of the roof when he heard laughter from inside the house. He paused and listened. Amina was sitting on the floor with the girls, teaching them how to make small paper flowers. Sarah giggled as Amina carefully guided her hands. Mina clapped happily when she finished her own flower. Harun leaned against the wall and watched quietly. For the first time in a long while, his house felt warm again. Later that evening, as the sun began to set, Amina stepped outside where Harun was sitting. "Your daughters are very creative," she said with a small smile. Harun nodded. "They like you very much." Amina looked at him softly. "They have good hearts. That comes from you."
There was a comfortable silence between them for a moment.
Then Amina spoke again, carefully. "Harun, may I say something honestly?" He nodded. "I can see how much you love your daughters, but I also see how tired you are. You carry everything alone. That is not easy." Harun lowered his head. "I do not have a choice. Death to the turncoat. Sometimes accepting help is also a form of strength." Her words touched him deeply. As days turned into weeks, the girls grew closer to Amina. They began waiting eagerly for her visits. Sometimes they would ask Harun, "Is teacher Amina coming today?" Harun always answered gently, though his heart felt more confused each time. One evening, Amina invited Harun and his daughters to her small home in the village. She wanted them to have tea with her. Harun was hesitant at first, but the girls were excited, so he agreed. Amina's house was simple but neat. Fresh flowers sat on the table and warm light filled the room. She prepared tea and served them with kindness. She spoke softly with Sarah and Mina, asking about their favorite stories, their school, and their dreams. At one point, Mina looked at Amina and said something that made Harun freeze. "Teacher Amina, you feel like a mother to us." Amina's eyes softened, but she did not answer immediately. She simply placed her hand gently on Mina's head. Harun felt his chest tighten, but not in pain. Instead, he felt something new, a strange mix of warmth and fear. That night, as they walked back home, Sarah held Harun's hand tightly. "Papa," she said quietly, "I like teacher Amina." Harun smiled gently. "I know, my child." A few days later, Karim visited Harun again. They sat together outside the house as the evening breeze passed through the trees. "You look different lately," Karim said thoughtfully. Harun looked at him. "Different how?" "Lighter," Karim replied. "Like you are not carrying the whole world alone anymore." Harun did not answer right away. Instead, he looked toward the house where Amina was inside helping the girls with their homework. Karim followed his gaze. "She is a good woman." Harun nodded slowly. "Yes." Karim placed a hand on his shoulder. "If you are thinking about taking a step forward, make sure it is for the right reasons. Not loneliness, not pressure, but love and care for your daughters." Harun exhaled deeply. "That is all I want." One afternoon, Amina came to the ranch with a small gardening tool in her hand. "I thought we could plant some flowers near the house," she said with a gentle smile. Sarah and Mina clapped happily and ran outside with her. Harun watched as they dug small holes in the soil, planted seeds, and carefully covered them with dirt. Amina knelt beside the girls, showing them how to water the plants gently. Harun felt something shift inside him. The ranch, which had felt empty for so long, suddenly looked hopeful again. Later that day, as Amina prepared to leave, she spoke quietly to Harun near the gate. "I do not want to rush anything," she said honestly, "but I care about your daughters. And I respect you deeply." Harun looked at her, feeling both nervous and grateful. "I do not know what the future holds," he replied slowly. "But I see how much my girls trust you." Amina nodded. "Trust is something very precious." That night, after putting Sarah and Mina to bed, Harun stood outside once again under the open sky. The stars shimmered above him, just like before. But this time his heart did not feel as heavy. He thought about his wife with love, not only with pain. He thought about his daughters, smiling more than they had in months. And he thought about Amina, her kindness, her patience, and the warmth she had brought back into their lives. For the first time, Haroun did not feel like he was betraying his past by thinking about the future. He whispered softly, "If this is meant to be, guide my steps." Inside the house, Sarah and Mina slept peacefully, unaware of the changes slowly unfolding around them.
Outside, the wind moved gently across the land, carrying with it a new sense of hope. Haroun did not know exactly what would happen next. He did not know if remarriage was the right path, or if the village would accept his decision. But one thing was clear. The morning after Haroun spent a long night thinking, the sun rose softly over the ranch. Golden light spread across the land, touching the tall grass, the old barn, and the small wooden house where Haroun and his daughters lived. For the first time in many months, the morning did not feel heavy. Instead, it carried a quiet sense of hope. Inside the house, Sarah and Mina were already awake. They were sitting at the small table, whispering excitedly to each other. Haroun could hear bits of their conversation as he prepared breakfast in the kitchen. "Do you think Teacher Amina will come today?" Mina asked. "I hope so," Sarah replied softly. Haroun smiled to himself but did not say anything. He placed warm bread and milk on the table and called them gently. "Come and eat, my girls!" They sat down quickly, still smiling. After breakfast, Haroun stepped outside. The air felt fresh, and the sky was clear. He walked toward the small garden where Amina and the girls had planted flowers a few days earlier. Tiny green sprouts were already beginning to appear from the soil. Haroun knelt down and touched the ground carefully. He felt something deep inside him, a feeling he had almost forgotten. Peace. A short time later, Amina arrived at the ranch just as she often did. She was carrying a small cloth bag in her hand. "Good morning, Haroun," she said warmly. "Good morning," he replied, his voice steady but kind. Sarah and Mina ran toward her immediately. "Teacher Amina!" they called happily. She knelt down and hugged them gently. "Good morning, my bright girls." Haroun watched them closely. He noticed how naturally they moved toward her, how safe they felt in her presence. That day, Amina stayed longer than usual. She helped the girls with their schoolwork, told them stories, and even taught them how to bake simple biscuits in the small kitchen. Haroun sat quietly nearby, fixing a broken chair, but his mind was focused on what he needed to do. By late afternoon, as the sun began to lower in the sky, Amina prepared to leave. Haroun walked her toward the gate. "Amina," he said slowly, his voice a little serious now. She stopped and looked at him. "I have been thinking a lot," he continued, "about my daughters, about our future." Amina listened carefully, her face calm. "My girls need a mother," Haroun said gently, "and I need someone who can care for them with love and patience." Amina did not speak right away. She took a slow breath.
"I care deeply about Sarah and Mina," she replied honestly.
"But I would never want to rush you or pressure you." Haroun nodded. "This is not a rushed decision. I have thought about it for a long time." They stood there in silence for a moment, the evening breeze moving softly between them. Finally, Haroun spoke again. "If you are willing, I would like to speak with your family about marriage." Amina's eyes widened slightly but then softened. She nodded slowly. "If this is your sincere wish, then I will speak with my family as well." Haroun felt a weight lift from his chest. He did not feel fear anymore, only clarity. In the following weeks, Haroun and Amina spoke with their families. The village elders were informed, and respectful conversations took place. Some people in the village whispered and gossiped, as they always did, but many admired Haroun's careful and thoughtful approach. Sarah and Mina were told gently about the idea of Amina becoming their new mother. Haroun sat with them one evening by the small fire. "My loves," he said softly, holding their hands, "Teacher Amina cares about you very much. And she cares about me too. How would you feel if she became part of our family?" Sarah looked at him carefully. "Will she still love us like she does now?" Haroun nodded. "Even more?" Mina hugged him tightly. "Then I like that idea, Papa." Haroun felt tears fill his eyes, but this time they were not tears of pain.
They were tears of relief and gratitude. Soon, the day of Haroon and Amina's marriage arrived. It was not a grand celebration, but a simple and respectful one.
Close family members, neighbors, and a few villagers gathered to bless the union. Sarah and Mina wore small, pretty dresses and stood proudly beside their father.
Amina looked gentle and radiant, her smile calm and full of kindness. When the ceremony was completed, Haroon felt something settle peacefully inside his heart. He had not forgotten his first wife, but he had chosen a new path with love and respect. After the marriage, Amina moved into the ranch house with Haroon and the girls.
From the very first day, she treated Sarah and Mina with warmth and care.
She helped them get ready for school in the mornings, braided their hair, packed their small bags, and walked them to the door with a smile. In the evenings, she cooked meals with Haroon, talking softly about their day. Sometimes she sat with the girls, listening to their stories, their worries, and their dreams. Slowly, the house began to feel alive again. Laughter returned to the rooms, and the silence that once filled the space faded away. Haroon noticed the change in his daughters clearly. Sarah smiled more, her eyes brighter than before. Mina became more playful and confident. One evening, as they all sat together for dinner, Mina suddenly spoke. "Amina, can I call you Mama?" The room fell quiet for a moment. Amina looked at Haroon, then at Mina, her eyes full of emotion. "If you feel that way in your heart," she said gently, "I would be honored." Mina jumped up and hugged her tightly. Sarah followed, wrapping her arms around them both. Haroon watched this scene with a full heart. He felt gratitude beyond words. As time passed, Haroon slowly began rebuilding his ranch. With Amina's encouragement, he started again, this time more carefully. He bought a few healthy cattle, one by one, instead of rushing. Amina often joined him outside, helping with small tasks or simply sitting nearby while he worked. One morning, as they stood together near the fence watching the new cattle graze peacefully, Amina spoke softly.
"You have come a long way, Haroon."
He looked at her and nodded. "I could not have done it without you." She smiled.
"We are a team now."
Inside the house, Sarah and Mina were planting more flowers in their little garden, laughing as they watered the soil gently. The ranch that once felt broken and empty was slowly becoming whole again. Late one night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Haroon stood outside alone under the starry sky. The wind moved gently across the land, just like it had on so many nights before. But this time, his heart felt different. He looked toward the house where his daughters and his new wife slept peacefully. He thought about the painful decision he had once made, to sacrifice his cattle to protect his girls. He thought about his long struggle as a single father, the sleepless nights, the loneliness, and the doubt. And then he thought about the present, his daughters smiling, his home filled with warmth, and a kind woman standing beside him in life. Haroon whispered softly into the night, "Thank you!" Inside, Sarah and Mina slept peacefully, their dreams full of happiness and safety. Amina slept with a calm heart, grateful for the family she had become part of. And Haroon finally slept too, deeply, peacefully, and without fear. The ranch was no longer just land and wood. It had become a home again, filled with love, patience, and hope. The girls had found the mother they needed, but Haroon had found a partner who respected his past and embraced his future.